Now, I think it's pretty safe to say at this point in time that Disney has had the absolute worst year of 2023, and they are looking to have a even bigger challenge throughout all of 2024, not just based on the Disney stock situation and Snow White the live-action remake, but let's not forget about park attendees very progressively ditching the theme parks around the entire globe, and exactly how Bob Iger has been endlessly lying to the shareholders and the general public, and how that has been made fully aware to everybody, and to the point where even regular common moviegoers are beginning to abandon Disney as it is. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new, and like this video to see future updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. Now, one thing revolving around Gal Gadot is that we know that there's been a lot of drama surrounding Snow White, the live-action remake, that has been going through numerous re-edits, mind you, by director Mark Webb, and the editors really desperately trying to fix this movie. And I know I've said this many, many times, that there is nothing that you can do to fix this movie, no matter how many re-edits or alterations you do to the movie, or reshoots, which by the way is going to be a big subject for today. No matter what you do, it's not going to change the course of failure for Snow White. As long as you got those creatures in there, as Disney likes to call them, that's what Disney calls them, the 7 magical creatures, and you got Zegler as Snow White, this movie is dead on arrival. Now, moving beyond all of this and focusing on actress Gal Gadot has a lot to do with exactly what's going on with their plan to fix this movie in its entirety. Now, with actress Gal heavily involved with the upcoming Snow White film, one major development has to do with her involvement with Disney, and what Gal recently did to them as a company. As it turns out, Disney is now very confident that they will be able to embrace some level of reshoots for Snow White 2024 if the SAG strike ends before that year. However, this ongoing drama happening right now behind closed doors is that Disney desperately needs to refilm some sequences involving the evil queen portrayed by actress Gal Gadot, some of which are scenes that are heavily flawed that need fixing. Gal was even informed about these planned reshoots that are now very likely to happen, with the SAG strike looking to end by this month being very likely as well. Gal shot down and is refusing to take part in any reshoots after Disney abandoned her roles from Disney altogether. As we discussed a couple of days ago, she was supposed to be in The Acolyte and the Acolyte spin-off series. We'll talk more about that later. And from the other Snow White prequels as well. Disney is now in full panic mode, as they are not likely to get Gal back to do some reshoots after what they did, and are turning their heads to the possibility of using techniques with CGI or some level of recasting for specific shots that don't really focus on Gal's face per se. So, one thing I want to focus on here, guys, before I get to the next big bit about all of this, is the fact that we talked about this a couple of days ago, that Disney did indeed ditch, of course, Gal Gadot from multiple Disney projects, some of which were related to Star Wars, others of which, by the way, were a part of the failed Snow White universe that is now no more, and now they want her back for reshoots, alright? So, this is exactly what I mean by how Disney is such a flawed company, a flawed studio that knows nothing about running things or leadership skills or anything like that. You got people who have actually failed with their leadership skills, like Bob Iger and Bob Chapek, as I like to call it, the Battle of the Bobs. Who's worse, Chapek or Iger? I pick Iger. The thing about this, though, is that you have the fact that they feel that some scenes are crucial and need to be reshot for Snow White the live-action remake. Now, we already talked about this for months, that there was always a plan A and a plan B working in conjunction, alright? They always wanted to get plan B set in place if and only if the SAG strike would end by November 1 and or before the 2024 year at the latest. And it's looking very likely now that SAG and that strike is going to end in the very near future, quite possibly, like I said, this week. Negotiations are still happening, and it's assumed to actually take place until at least this Friday. But what's interesting about this further is exactly what Gal did to Disney by shooting down any involvement in reshoots. The fact that they really are doubling down on this movie, willing to spend and pour more funds into it is just ludicrous. I don't know what's wrong with Disney. I don't know what they're thinking about this movie and what's going to make it so successful, but Bob Iger talked about this the other day, that he believes that this is going to be a box office hit and that it's going to do very well across the board. Now, moving onwards, this is where it gets even more involved, is that this is something that is being rushed by Disney, and it's going to cost them more to embrace these reshoots, which in the end will only hurt them in the long run with the box office. Other reshoots planned involve the actors of the 7 magical creatures. However, Gal refusing to return has put Disney in a very damaging situation right now that is leading them to spend more money on this film that's going to up the budget, such as usage of CGI and or possible recasting for specific shots. In addition to this, Gal is also refusing to do less press interviews for Snow White and made a deal with Disney to do that at a lower level than originally intended, which is going to promote the film less by those with stardom power, much like Gal Gadot. Now, this in turn is also making the reshoots for Snow White unpredictable for Disney, timeline-wise, as far as how long they will take and whether or not this will create a delay for the film's release in theaters. Gal is currently trying to save her career from the looming backlash of Snow White 2024, and this was made aware to Disney via her team. Now, again, like I said before, the fact that Gal is trying to save her own image, trying to save her own career, that's what it's really all about at the end of the day. That's why she is distancing herself from Rachel Zegler. We talked about that 2 weeks ago, how she won't be involved in a lot of late night shows or interviews, side by side with Rachel Zegler and other cast members, stuff like that. She would prefer to do it on her own and at a reduced level. Now, the thing about Disney is that they really do believe, or they are lying, either or, about Snow White being a success. I don't see how this movie is going to make a lot of money. We know and have learned that The Little Mermaid ended up in a worse situation than previously, reported. The actual budget was higher than originally explained among the Hollywood trades, and it just goes to show you that Disney is so out of touch with reality, much like many other Hollywood studios, but I think that Disney is the top tier one that really knows nothing about their fan base, knows nothing about their customers, and it's all about pushing an agenda and just focusing on that instead of story and character development. That's what it's really all about at the end of the day, right? So, we have, of course, Gal, Rachel, Andrew Burnap, and the actors of the 7 magical creatures that are absolutely going to suffer from this movie. It's going to tarnish their acting careers. It's not going to be good. It's going to follow them forever. And that's just that. That's how it's going to be. And so we know that Bob Iger, this is going to also impact his legacy or whatever's left of his legacy. And there's no doubt about it that this could absolutely lead to the Disney stock tanking even worse throughout next year. So anyway, guys, I would love to hear your take on all of this below in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys next time.